Part of the agenda and actions and information items. Members of the board, please certify that only lawful matters were discussed in the closed session. Board members will respond by roll call.
Dr. Burnett,
Yes.
Mrs. McMurtry,
Yes.
and Mrs. Sochek.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Harrisburg.
Could I have a motion to go into close?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is so carried. We're now in close.
Mhm.
Okay. Could I have a motion to go out of close?
So moved.
Second.
Moving properly second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion is so carried. And pursuant to the Code of Virginia, the board has discussed personnel matters, student matters, legal matters during closed session. Matters discussed in closed sessions have been added to the consent agenda and other parts of the agenda as action and information items. Members of the board, please certify that only lawful matters were discussed in closed session. Board members will respond by roll call.
Dr. Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Harrow,
Yes.
Mrs. McMurtry,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobchak.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, the financials.
I move we approve the additions as listed in the packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moving properly second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion is so carried. Okay, next we have public announcements. March, we have Women's History Month. March the 22nd, Staff Professional Development, Student Development Day. Students do not report. March the 23rd, end of the 9-week grading period. March the 30th, report cards issued. April the 3rd through the 7th, spring break. April the 10th, school board meeting at St. Clair Walker Middle School at 6:30. Okay, next we have recognitions. Dr. Sykes.
We do have recognitions, and so you all will remember that on March 2nd, we attended the VSBA Eastern Regional School Board Association Forum. And at that forum, we took artwork from each of our 3 schools because there's an art competition at the elementary, middle, and high school level. I was excited to share, and am excited to share that MES student Tripper Whittington, who's a 4th grader at MES, won 2nd place for his artwork, which we are getting up here. We invited Tripper, but I don't know. Is he here? Tripper, if you would like to come up with Miss Dixie Dewar, who has been your art teacher while you've been at the elementary school, we have a podium here. If you would like to tell us a little bit about your artwork that won.
This, can I tell you what this is from?
Yes, you can.
Push
This
that mic down.
this dragon comes from a game called The Witcher. And his appearance, that thing on his head can it cuts really well. A couple minutes. Yeah. And I made the body small enough so it can fly.
Cool.
And I made a lot of other things like hybrid dinosaurs.
Tripper really loves to draw, and he draws a lot. And I did a lesson about dragons, and we were drawing dragons. We talked about the scales and the way you make the skin look rough and texturing and things like that. And before I finished the lesson with the others, he had already drawn his dragon and he was ready to do another dragon. And he brought this to me, and it's a large drawing. It's the largest that we could have for the show, literally. And he brought it to me, and then the little tip of the tail was missing, and he just said, "Oh, wait, I have to add this." And there was the tail, and it's perfectly proportioned. And looking at this picture, it's difficult to teach or show children how you can draw going off the page, that everything doesn't have to be contained in a box, perfectly drawn in that space. And Tripper definitely picked up on things can go off the page. And if you were to finish that drawing, it would be perfectly symmetrical and what it needs to be in size. So he really did an outstanding job with all the details. And I don't know what else to say. He's just been one of my great artists in my fourth grade. This is Whittington, my fourth grader. He's awesome. And I've known him since he was kindergarten. And it's just amazing how he has grown and all the great things he does with me. So I'm very proud of him. So thank you so much.
Wait, do I get an award?
So
Yeah,
Tripper, what we
you will.
decided to do is we want to keep your artwork on display at the school board office for a little while, and it's right in the front door on an easel as
There's
soon
your
as
award.
everyone comes in.
It's on there. It's just
And
a
so we've
picture
got a
of it.
picture to show everybody this evening, and after we've had it up there for about a month, I'll make sure I bring it down to MES and hand it back to you. Does that sound good?
And I honestly might come and take it for a couple of days. We have our art show
Oh, sure.
here.
Yes.
We have Miss Shannon and I do a music and art show. And so I have samples of things that we've done this year, and I wanted to display his Thursday. So if anybody wants to come, Thursday, 6 o'clock, we have a little art show and music program here. So anyway, all right, buddy. So you will get your ribbon after that, okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tripper.
Okay. Next we have is educational highlights. Dr. Elizabeth Sanders.
Good evening. I'm very excited to have seventh graders here with us from Mrs. Bowen's language arts class. They've been learning about the Harlem Renaissance, but it's actually been a cross-curricular project because they've been studying the Harlem Renaissance in English and in history. So we have 6 seventh graders here with us tonight who volunteered to present. We have been practicing since Friday. We're all going to remember to breathe and slow down, but I'm just very proud of them that they volunteered and they're willing to speak publicly. As they go through their slides, please know they do have interactive links in there. We're not going to go through all of those tonight, but if you ever have a chance to look at them, you can see they have a lot of links that you can click on to hear the music or to see more of the artist's works that they're going to be focusing on. They've really done a great job of preparing their presentations. You'll get a small taste of them tonight.
Good evening. I am Caesar Gresham, and I will be presenting you my Harlem Renaissance Museum project. What is the Harlem Renaissance? The Harlem Renaissance was an African-American artistic, cultural, and intellectual movement in the 1920s and 30s in Harlem, New York. It helped so many African-Americans and it helped kickstart many careers. William Henry Chick Webb. William Webb, better known as Chick Webb, was a well-known musician during the Harlem Renaissance. He was a really good jazz and swing music drummer. The Chick Webb Orchestra was the name of his band. He died at the age of 34 due to spinal tuberculosis. Caden Hearn. At Governor Kathy Hughes' historic inauguration, a lyrically gifted 9-year-old from Harlem stole the show. His name is Caden Hearn. On amateur night at the Apollo Theater, Kathy Hughes saw Caden and she asked him if he was going to watch somebody. He explained that he was going to recite his poem. Right then and there, he recited the poem from memory. At that moment, Kathy Hughes said, "If I win this election, you are my poet laureate, and I want you here." And the rest is history. Thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Melissa Moore. I'm in seventh grade, and I will be presenting my Harlem Renaissance Museum. Here I have what was the Harlem Renaissance, which is what Caesar explained. And on my slides, I have Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, Florence Mills, Augusta Savage, and then I have Amanda Gorman as my contemporary artist. I have Zora Neale Hurston. She was an author. Langston Hughes was a very influential and important African-American writer. He frequently moved while he was a child, so it introduced him to many different cultures and communities, which helped him become an amazing poet. Then I have Florence Mills. She is nicknamed the Queen of Happiness. She is the daughter of formerly enslaved parents. She performed with her sisters, and they were called the Mill Sisters. But then her sisters quit, and she joined a Panama Four and a traveling black show called the Tennessee 10. And she credits the play Shuffle Along for launching her career. I have Augusta Savage and Amanda Gorman, and I have my credits. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Have a nice day.
Hello, my name is Ingrid Carey and I'm in seventh grade. Today I'll be focusing on two people in my Harlem Renaissance slideshow. Writer Zora Neale Hurston, poet Langston Hughes, singer Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday was known as the greatest jazz singer of all during the 1920s and 30s. Even though she was a great singer, she never got any formal training, so she was mostly self-taught. Augusta Savage, Louis Armstrong. This is my contemporary poet, Nikki Grimes. Nikki Grimes was born on October 20th, 1950. She's a contemporary poet, which means she is still alive. I added her because she takes poems written during the Harlem Renaissance and rewrites them in her own style. The reason why the last words of each line are in bold is because when you read them together, which is thunder blossoms gorgeously above our heads, they make a line written in the original poem. That's why I love her work so much. And this was the original poem. And if you look at the first line, it's the same as the bold. And same with this one. I have wrapped my dreams in a silken cloth. And the first line of that one. And my credits. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julia Dyes. I'm a seventh grade student, and I'll be presenting my Harlem Renaissance Museum. I'll be focusing on two of my favorite artists. The Harlem Renaissance. Selma Burke. My first artist is Selma Burke. Selma Burke was an African sculptor who founded the Selma Burke Art Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She sculpted famous African Americans such as Martin Luther King Jr., Franklin Roosevelt, Duke Ellington, and Booker T. Washington. These are three of her sculptures. The one all the way on the left is her sculpture of Martin Luther King. President Franklin Roosevelt. Selma Burke's sculpture of Franklin Roosevelt was so exceptional and ended up being the inspiration for the face of the dime. James Van Der Zee was a photographer. These are three of his photos. County Cullen was a poet. And here are two of his poems. And this is Ella Fitzgerald. She's the second artist I'll be focusing on. Ella Fitzgerald was an amazing singer. She started her music career when she was a teenager. She wrote songs such as Summertime, It Don't Mean a Thing, and many more. She performed at the Apollo Theater. One night she was going to dance, but two sisters that danced before her had such a good performance, she changed her act to singing to prevent herself from being embarrassed. At first the crowd disliked her, but when she was finished, the crowd loved her. This is Ella's song, It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. My final person is Caden Hearn. He's my contemporary artist. This is his poem and my credits.
Good evening. My name is Kinsley Horn, and today I'll be sharing two of my favorite characters from the Harlem Renaissance. Lottie McKay. He was known for commemorating peasant life in Jamaica by turning his experiences into poems. He was a central figure in the Harlem Renaissance. He wrote many poems, including If We Must Die, and took honor in his African American heritage. This is a picture of him and then something that he wrote. County Cullen. Marlin. She was known for her singing. She was a very influential person, and she expressed her feelings through music.
She was a blues singer and she had very raspy voice. She sold hit records in the early 1920s. She was also a comedian, and she was also the star of To Boo. This is her, one of her songs, and her album cover. Aaron Douglas. This is him and a picture of his painting. Hayden Hearn. This is him and my credits.
Good evening, I'm Melody Jones. I'm a seventh grade student, and tonight I will be presenting my Harlem Renaissance Virtual Museum. Here's my introduction, which Caesar already went over. Writer Marcus Garvey, and more about him, and poet Claude McKay. Claude McKay was a Jamaican-born poet who was influential during the Harlem Renaissance for his work in philosophies. His work addressed the dualities in society when it came to Black people. He also studied how Black people coped with a racist society. He was the son of peasant farmers, and one of the principles instilled in him was to be proud of his African heritage. From a young age, he showed interest in poetry and did lots of studying. His brother was a teacher and guided him to start writing verse in Jamaican dialect. In 1912, he traveled to America for schooling and eventually New York. In America, he experienced a great deal of racism, and this encouraged him to continue writing poetry. He had several books and poems published. His writing and activism impacted people then, and it still does today. Here I have more about him, and one of his poems is If We Must Die. Part of his poem I really liked was, if we must die, oh let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain, then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us though dead. My musician, Josephine Baker. Here I have a song of her singing. And then artist Charles Austin, which is going to be my second focus. Charles Austin was an influential artist who lived in Harlem, New York. He did everything from painting, sculpting, illustrations, and he was even a teacher. His father was a slave born in North Carolina, and with the conclusion of the Civil War, he went to college and graduated, later becoming a minister and founder of St. Michael's Apostle Church. His family was a major inspiration for his art. Him and his family were just a few out of many that traveled to New York during the Great Migration. While there, he saw the suffering and strength of people in Harlem and expressed this through his art. He showcased his personal experience and also universally relatable experiences within the Black diaspora. One of his popular works was an oil painting named The Family. Here I have some of his paintings, and the family is here. My contemporary figure was Amanda Gorman. She spoke at the 2021 inauguration. And then here I have her speech and more about her. And my credit. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can tell, they've done a lot of research and a lot of work. And they also, again, learning how to put a presentation together that's interactive and then actually get to present it to an audience. I want to take another second to recognize Mrs. Bowen for all of her hard work. So thank you, Ms. Bowen, for providing this learning opportunity for our students. I know you and Mrs. Williams work closely. And also Ingrid Carey, I'm going to call you back up here. Ingrid was the third place winner of the oyster essay contest presented by the Tidewater Oyster Gardeners Association. And she's going to share one of her lines from her essay that again won third place, and you won $100, correct?
This is the very first line of my essay. Oysters wake up every day to help others, and just being there can improve their life. Yeah.
There's a lot of reading and writing and researching going on in the seventh grade, and we're very proud of our students. I also want to take a minute to thank our parents, because without you all, none of this is possible. So thank you, parents. We appreciate you coming out tonight. And did you all have any questions for our students? I noticed they snuck back to their seats.
Well done.
Good job.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next on the program, we have public comment. And the floor will be open for public comment. If you have a comment that you'd like to make, would you please come up and give your name and your district that you live in, and you have 3 minutes. Okay, so public comment is now open.
Hi, how are y'all doing? My name is Marion Denise Brown, and I have a daughter that goes from Middlesex County to Faison School. She's been going through the school for more than 7 years now. I have been asking for almost 3 years now to get her a bigger vehicle that she needs to be in. She's got a lot of medical issues. Also too, she has tore up about 6 pair of brand new Crocs that I have sitting in this bag that I have just purchased in this past 6 months. The car is too small in the back. She can't get her feet in and out of the vehicle. And she's tearing up brand new shoes that cost $50-some a piece. And I'm a single parent. I have been to Billy. I have been to Dustin. And nothing has been done. And also too, she was supposed to have a new seatbelt ordered. My daughter has been in 4 accidents in the last 5 years through the school system. We just had one in September where the whole side of the car got sideswiped on Route 264 for her to be going to school. My daughter right now has a concussion from this accident. This has been going on too long, and I need to see if something can get done about it. I have done videos for Billy. I have done videos for Dustin. Dustin has tried to move the black thing that's in the back of the car because you know it's a divider piece that goes through the back of the car for children that have a handicaps. And Haley, I have doctor's notes here. I have reports here where she's at school now, doesn't want to get in the vehicle because she's so paranoid, and Haley is very claustrophobic. Okay. I have letters from the school stating what they have to go through to get her in the vehicle in the afternoons. And then I have to put her in the vehicle in the mornings to make sure her legs and stuff get in the vehicle, because the seat is right, like the seat part is here, her legs is right up in the back of that metal. That's there. And I don't think it's right for my child to have to go up and down the road for an hour and 10 minutes, two ways, up and back down. I have requested for a van to be bought for her for this reason, and it has nothing been done. Nothing in 3 years. Like I said, I've been to Billy and I've been to Dustin, and they were supposed to have a new car seat harness thing ordered for her to be put, a new one to be put in that car she's riding in right now, because the state police told them that it was not properly put in that vehicle. So she measured her because she went by the school. Billy measured her. They drove by there. Her driver told me that they measured her, but I've never seen a belt yet.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, ma'am.
So I'm going to put it just like this. I'm going to give you 30 days to make your decision. And then after that, we will be going to court. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
My name is Michael Nez. I live at Locust Hill. Students need social and emotional skills to succeed in life. They need to develop empathy for others, care about other people's feelings, recognize feelings, and respond in caring ways. They need to be able to work through conflict. Actually, it's not just students that need these skills, we all do. And like language, all this comes naturally to us. But also like language, these skills are not going to develop without someone developing in modeling it for and teaching these skills. The best way to do it is to model it. Let them see you practicing it. but they are important. They need to be developed, and school success depends on these skills. Now, there are some that say, well, this is not the educator's purview. They're overstepping their bounds. For some reason, social and emotional learning has become a bad phrase. But schools have always taught these skills. You line up one behind the other, you take your turn. You don't speak while other people are speaking. You don't interrupt. You say, excuse me. These are all skills, and they show a capacity for caring about other people's feelings. And this also, social emotional skills are needed not just because for success, because students have social emotional needs. What this does when this is taught in schools in a systematic way, evidence has shown that academic success, academic outcomes improve, and behavioral problems decrease. Now, we have a problem with bullying. All school systems, all schools have a problem with bullying. But there are ways that you can deal with that to educate. You can't just use it in a punitive way. You can't just use a stick. You'll be chasing after the tiger. What you need to do is tame it by teaching social and emotional anti-bullying, bullying prevention in the schools. There are programs. Second Step has a program, social emotional and anti-bullying prevention program. It's very well thought out. They have a curriculum, social emotional Second Step, kindergarten to the 12th grade. The anti-bullying program runs from kindergarten to the 5th grade. We're leaving our children behind. This world has too many challenges. Parents are the first step, and you all are the second step.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me back there? We're having a problem hearing, and I know if we can't hear, the people watching on YouTube can't hear either. Racism in the United States has long, unjust, and embarrassing past, from slavery to Jim Crow and segregation. I'm sorry, my name is Dawn. I live in Urbana, but I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Middlesex NAACP. From slavery to Jim Crow and segregation, there's a lot to teach about race and racism. When you discuss current incidents of racism and injustice, it is often helpful to ground the discussion in historical context. But if the context is not taught, then there is no grounding the conversation. When we uncover bias, discrimination, and injustice with students, it's important we do not leave them with an overwhelming feeling of hopelessness and despair. It can easily happen when you consider the monumental task of making the world more equitable and just. At the same time, we do not want to fill their heads with false or empty hopes. It is useful to convey a sense of positive expression and inspire action and activism. One way to do this is by teaching about small and large efforts of social change movement and how they brought about progress throughout history. Provide examples of social justice triumphs won through the blood, sweat, and tears of ordinary and extraordinary people. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Help your students exemplify that statement. Have you heard of microaggressions? Microaggressions, a brief, everyday verbal behavior and environmental exchange, both unintentional and intentional, that sends despairing messages to individuals. Microaggression can have serious impact and should not be dismissed because of their belief or often unintentional nature. Research have given links continuous exposure of microaggression to depression, anxiety-related symptoms, diminished psychological well-being, and physical health. As we can see in the outcome from the behaviors that are tolerated by students and some staff, under no circumstances should any child, Black or white, be worried about going to an adult in the school system. But now we find ourselves in this time. Last I checked, we are in 2023. We should not be dealing with Jim Crow mentalities. I would classify the issues in the school system as microaggressions. I stand here today and challenge every administrative staff member, every teacher to look at the situation and put yourself where the children are. I know it will be very hard for some because you don't know what it's like to deal with the constant discrimination and bullying that some students are going through. While the students are young and some say they don't know what they're saying, they realize when they're older, they know what they're saying. But when it's impacting somebody else's life, it is an issue. I was told the behaviors are learned at home. In some cases, I beg to differ. I have stated before, our children are in school longer than they are at home. We have had discussions. It is in many ways being looked at. But what is the results? More students are being bullied. We have too much going on in the world, and it is getting closer and closer to home. I do not want the tragedy that has taken over communities to plague Middlesex. Tonight, there is a meeting in Williamsburg on Virginia history and social studies standards of learning. The January 2023 draft is clearly going into the political agenda and is further attempting to whitewash American history even more and discriminate against Black students, and it is both anti-intellectual and undemocratic. If this draft passes, will Middlesex County school system be strong enough to teach real history or continue with the whitewash? Please think about this as you set rules and policies for our children. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Melody Jones. As you all should remember, I was here at the last school board meeting speaking on behalf of the same racial disturbance. I wish I could say it has gotten better, but unfortunately I cannot. I still have to attend school every day in an environment where my presence is unwelcome simply because of my brown skin. There's no justifiable reason for me to be threatened or feel harassed for being Black. As a 13-year-old girl, I should not be spending my free time convincing you all that my life is worth protecting. We are in the year 2023, and I'm fighting the same fight my great-grandmother did. What sense does that make? I'm here expressing this issue to you all because each and every one of you are in a position to do something, and all I'm asking is for you to use that power to create change. I'm expected to believe that you all, the St. Clair Walker staff and the administration, have my best interests in mind. How am I supposed to believe that when the assistant principal blatantly uses the N-word when addressing the situation? How am I supposed to believe that when y'all continuously blow this situation off and deem it as not a school issue? Unacceptable. I've had to look towards outside resources such as the NAACP because you all still have yet to prove I can depend upon you. Since this issue doesn't seem to hold value to you all, I will keep spending my free time pushing this issue. I will keep using my voice. I will keep coming here until you all are sick of hearing the name Melody Jones. I will keep fighting for change.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me back there? What about now? 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 Okay. Robert Jackson, Urbana. Racism, ignorance, stupidity, and hatred must be habit forming because so many are addicted to it. I mention these imperfections because they all exist at this school. When speaking to several parents after my last meeting here, they advised me that nothing has changed and the bullying is still going on. When is enough enough? One of my parents I spoke with said that when her child went to the assistant principal office to report a bullying issue, she used the nigger word rather than having the decency to say the N word. I was told the child was very upset, and that is understandable. That is unacceptable. I was informed by another parent that the counselor also used the ethnic slur when talking to her. This is a typical example of systemic racism. How can this school allow anyone to teach or counsel students with that racist attitude? Both the assistant principal and counselor need to be held accountable for their actions. I venture to say that if the assistant principal was Black and a white student came to the office complaining about being called a cracker or a honker, and the assistant principal didn't have the decency to use a C word, there would be consequences. School districts have the legal obligation to protect students from bullying and to address the issues when it occurs. It's obvious that is not happening here. It is evident that the principal, assistant principal, counselor, and the superintendent have no knowledge of how to deal with this problem of bullying, or they just want to sweep it under the rug. This type of action will not be tolerated. I was an activist in Maryland for years just for this reason. I can tell you action speaks louder than words. In closing, I would say to you that all the racism that goes on in this school, in my opinion, this school is a cesspool. I repeat, a cesspool that needs to be cleaned. The cleaning process needs to start with the assistant principal and counselor. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Melody's great aunt. And I'm standing before you. I don't live in the district, but this is a public forum. I'm concerned for not just Melody, but all the kids. Because we do have to set an example. And first and foremost, she has come to you bravely at 13 to ask for your help. To you, for you, all of you, do you all have children in this district? In this school system? If you do, you should be doing something about it. If you don't, you still should be doing something about it. It's unfortunate that it's happening, but it's happening, and it landed at your doorstep. And as her family member and all these people in this community, it takes a village. We have to correct the wrongs that have been done. My niece is going through anxiety, all kinds of things that you don't see. And it's not just affecting her, it's affecting her siblings that also go to this school, who were younger than her. So as I stand before you all, Black, white, or indifferent, we as a community are expecting it. No more, we are expecting you all to step up. Put your big drawers on, put them on, and do something about it. Thank you. Now I'm going to go back to my parents, but I had to come here and say, thank you.
Seeing no one else, public input is now closed. Next we have is the board members' committee reports. Okay. Claudia. Sure.
Both of my, boards meet in April, and so I'll have a May report.
Okay. Dr. Burnett.
On March the 4th, and actually Mr. Harrow had the distinct pleasure of attending the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School Symposium held on the campus of Virginia Commonwealth University. This is kind of the final exam for the students that attend the Governor's School. And they presented the results of their research. It was outstanding. Now, we can be proud, I think, of all of the students. I'll mention the Middlesex students who made presentations: Eric Grellock, Courtney Harrow, Jessup Lowry, Sydney Rader, Michaela Seamster, and William Walker. These students could have been in college if somebody had walked in off the street, I think, because that was really the level of the scholarship that at least I heard. Maybe Mr. Harrow would like to make a comment as well. You're doing great. Okay, so there is a board meeting of the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School on Thursday. The Middlesex Foundation, of which I'm also a representative from the school board, meets on this Wednesday. And the Finance Committee meets the last Wednesday of this month. I'll have further reports at the next board meeting.
Okay. Mr. Harrow.
Also, we'll be at the Finance Committee meeting. Things are looking good, folks. The county is behind the school system more than you know. I know it sounds sometimes awful that they're not, but they are. And given time, I think we're going to appreciate what they have in mind for us.
I have a meeting Wednesday for my committee, and so I'll have a report next meeting.
Okay. And as far as myself, the only thing I have been going over and working with is the presentation that will come up from Hampton Road Sanitation. And okay. Next, we have consent agenda. Okay, minutes from the February 13th, 15th, and 27th. We need action. Can I have a motion that they be approved?
You just move to approve the consent agenda altogether.
All right. That was okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried. Business and finance report.
No, my motion must approve all of the consent agenda.
All consent agenda. Okay, we'll take care of that. All right. Action items. Ms. Dr. Sykes.
All right, the first thing we have is appropriation request, and that is found on page 26 or 27, actually, in your packet, and that is just a grant that we applied for and received for restraint and seclusion training, and what that will do is provide someone from each of the buildings to be trained in that and those techniques, and so that they can come back and then train additional staff, and so that is the only appropriation we have.
Okay. All right, next we have the presentation, Hampton Road Sanitation.
I move
Okay.
that we appropriate the request.
I second.
Moving properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion so carried. All right, next we have is Hampton Road Sanitation.
Yes, and so you will see in your packet, beginning on page 29, as has been discussed before, there is an offer for the parcel of property that currently is located here at St. Cloud Walker was purchased from Hampton Road Sanitation District. It is 0.564 piece of land that they need to complete the purchase that they've already made there. It is an offer of $4,300. The appraisal is included in your packet, so you should have had time to review that. Mr. Reed, as he had mentioned, had visited, back in December, visited 2 stations, reported on them at that meeting. And there is a copy of that report also located in the information that was already at your table in the back, just as a reminder of things there. We do have a representative here, Mr. Steve Turner, and he's available to answer any questions or provide any additional information that you seek. And then he's happy to help with any of your discussions with you.
Okay, the board.
If there are any questions, I'm happy to address those.
How amenable is HRSD to increasing this offer? Because I can foresee that all of our legal fees could be dumped in that.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that, you know, if you do have another a counter or proposal or a question of that you respond to that offer. Their desire is to you know, have a fair and equitable agreement with the purchase with the school board, as with any other property that they negotiate purchase of. So you know, they had the you know, appraisal, and that's what they base their offer on, is that appraisal. But they've in the past been willing to entertain, you know, counters and discussions of that nature.
And when Mr. Reed visited, he came back with some concerns. So in our counter proposal, should we then list the kind of aesthetic things that we are interested in seeing done?
Sure, absolutely. And I can give a little bit of an update on that as well. Like just last week, we had a meeting with HRSD's Architectural Review Committee, which consists of upper management personnel at HRSD. And some of the items discussed there, based on the renderings of the property, is they would like to see a better matching aesthetically with the colors and architecture of the school. So the engineer is working with the vendor who would provide the pre-manufactured building about what options we have for better architecture match of the school in terms of coloring and style. In addition, there was mentioned a desire for a fence that would be a layer of protection and security, particularly, you know, students who may wander onto the property. And so they're looking at providing a fence. I think they're just trying to decide on what style works best. And in addition to that, the landscaping buffer that was shown was a lower type of hedge. And so the desire would be to have larger plantings that would provide a higher degree of screening of the property from the school, you know, both for just aesthetic purposes and also, you know, helping to remove that temptation of seeing something there that, you know, a student or someone might want to go check out. And also to provide a little better screening from the road as well with some additional landscaping. So those are the items that were discussed this past week with the Architectural Review Committee at HRSD. But if you have other things you'd like to consider, we would encourage you to submit those as well.
Could we see another rendering after the fence, for example, and so forth, changes are made?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And as far as the odor control, that's a big concern. I saw at the one in Surrey that there is a odor control available for that. And this board probably would rather that we be ahead of the curve on that as far as odor control and put that in from the beginning rather than to wait and we start to have odor from it and then have to deal with it.
Correct. And so there is an odor control system proposed that would be included. It's actually a dual part system, so it's a redundant system. There is a carbon-based system, which is a very common typical technology for use in pump stations and odor control. So it'll be that. And then as a backup to that, if for some reason the department wasn't operating effectively or or if they just needed to do maintenance on that, there's the backup system and ionization system, which also provides odor control. So we have those two systems that are connected directly to the wet well, which is the primary source of odor for all pump stations. There's also going to be a gas monitor at the station. And so they'll be able to, if they're seeing higher levels of things, they'll be able to correlate that with, tweaking the system or, sometimes media needs changed or adjustments need to be made to that. So there's a monitoring system as well because, they're not going to be, it's not a manned facility, so they have to monitor that remotely. They also have provisions for additional odor control connections if necessary. We don't foresee it being a problem at this station, but we have those in place in case we start seeing unanticipated odors, then there are provisions in place they can connect additional equipment to it as well.
Anyone else? Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, welcome. So I'll make a note to provide updated renderings as soon as those are available.
All right. Dr. Sykes, metal detectors.
All right, so you will see a first read policy on page 89. And this is, so the policy is not very long or detailed. It is what happens next after the policy when you talk about procedures and such, is where the meat of really what goes on. But this policy is the same actually as a neighboring school division. It would be what we would receive from our school board attorney. They wrote it for the same. They wrote it for a neighboring school division, and it's one that I would suggest that if we move forward with the policy that we use here. As I said, the details then would go into as next steps, the regulations and procedures to implement. Dr. Bishop and I have been looking into those details. We had a phone conference or a teleconference recently with the same division that we pulled this policy from to really discuss how things were implemented at their schools, school year. And so we would want to put those things, all of those details in place, have our attorney review those. Next steps after that then would be coordinating training of the detectors. We do have 2 for use at Middlesex High School, which we've discussed that would be, if we decide to move forward, would be the place to implement detectors at first. Honestly, by the time we get through policy development and then the regulations and procedures, and training in place, then we are likely looking at putting something in place at the beginning of the next school year. At which time parents and students are notified. There's signage that's required to notify anybody that's coming into the building if you've got something like this in place. This would cover both random use. So if you just wanted to be able to use it on, again, random days and times at the front door, or, same thing policy would apply for if it was in place on a regular use. But this is the policy for a first read for this evening.
All right.
I move we accept the metal detector policy on first reading.
Have a second?
Second.
Moving properly second. Any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is so carried. Next we have is FY 24 budget. Dr. Sykes.
I just have a few slides, but I will go down here so that I can. So this is the final time I'm bringing you the budget, and this is for your action this evening. What will be included in this budget is, it does include a 7% compensation increase, and that is a 5.7 plus a step, which is a step is 1.3. And that is due to the Senate and the House both proposing a 7% compensation increase. And so we went ahead and built that into the budget that we are presenting this evening. This budget also includes the health insurance increase, which for us this year was a 9.9% increase. But what we also did was use some of our funding to help lower premiums for our employees also. And so that's built in. It includes 3 additional positions: Dean of Students position at the elementary school, a special education teacher position at the high school, and then an athletic trainer position. And that, what that does is takes away the part-time purchase service athletic trainer that we're using now and builds that in as a full-time MCPS employee. And so this is based on the current governor's current budget, which has not been finalized yet. This just kind of gives you an overview of what the per pupil expenditure would be. Just reminding you that the unadjusted ADM, which counts pre-K through 12th grade students, next year we're looking at 1231. But as a reminder, it is the adjusted ADM is what we receive our funding for, which is K-12. And so we've built this budget on an 1150 enrollment for next year. Our CIP projects, so I've gone over these before: roof restoration, the MCPS, and that's at the elementary school, the LED lighting, which would be for the elementary school next year. I have increased that somewhat. The cost of electrical services are a little bit more than when we first started putting this budget together. And then, of course, lastly is a larger piece that we've not made decisions on yet, and that would be the high school renovation. And so as a final revenue summary, and this is what was presented at the public hearing just a couple of weeks ago. State funds, you can see there is an increase. That does include primarily the increase in ADM that we're expecting or enrollment for next year. Federal funds, somewhat of an increase there, but actually that's based on ESSER funds that we're still going to use for 2 positions that are grant funded currently still at the elementary school. Other funds down slightly, and that specifically is tied to the River County's grant that will expire. That was a $50,000 grant that we've gone past the renewable pieces of that. So that's why you see a reduction there. So you'll see that what's in orange is the local ask, or what we require from our local board of supervisors. Again, this is what was presented at the public hearing. You can see that that is an additional $1,172,334, or just over a 10.5% increase. Debt service is slightly down. Normally, you would expect that because you've been paying along on your debt. Now, these numbers, keep in mind, are the current governor's budget, which is not final. We will expect to see that the state funds should increase for us there, because as I said, both the House and the Senate are proposing a 7% compensation increase. What's in here that we receive from the state funds only incorporates in what we would get from the state for 5%. So there's money still there that comes in for the additional 2%. We just don't know what that final amount will be once the budget is voted on. Also, Ms. Murray and I met just recently with Mr. Walker and Ms. Riccardi to look at these numbers, to look at what they also know is coming from the state. Mr. Walker feels pretty confidently in his conversations that the sales tax is going to come back even higher than what the state has predicted or projected, and that could potentially cover all of the loss that we were assuming with the calc tool error. Right now, that's only been corrected for FY23, which is the current year. But it could be that sales tax just comes back higher than what that loss was anyway. So that goes back in. And then, of course, what's decided on with the compensation supplement for the additional 2%. So we have to, as a school division, we have to present a budget to our governing source by April 1st. So it is time for you all to vote on this, even though we don't have a final budget from the state. some of the things that, as I said, could influence that and change. The piece I put in orange is where the Senate and the House versions are related to that additional compensation supplement. So my conversation with Mr. Walker, I said, I think it's fair to say that somewhere around $80,000, which is a split of the two, would be additional monies that would come to us that increases the state, what the state gives us, and decreases that ask for the locality. And then as he shared with us, we're expecting a larger, which is not shown on here on this table, larger sales tax increase, which also increases what the state provides us and decreases what that ask is. This just shows you some of the other pieces that are in there. The Senate version is still a whole lot more favorable. What it does is gets rid of the support cap. And so the Senate version would provide us a lot more. I don't see that happening, actually. The at-risk add-on, there's some additional funds in there from the Senate. That amount was cut from us going into this current year. That would be, we could be hopeful that that stayed in there. I think that what's highlighted in orange, we would see a split at least in additional monies that we would get from the state. So again, this is the budget piece that I'm asking you to approve, given that we have a time frame by code when that has to be sent to our Board of Supervisors. And then they, of course, will present their budget next month for the county to review. Any questions? Yes, sir.
How would you recommend we deal with any changes necessitated by changes in the state final budget?
So we are basing, the budget that I have in front of you includes everything that I just described. In our meeting with Mr. Walker, and looking at where the numbers fall in the county, and I don't want to speak for the county, it looks like the pieces that they may not have included in the county budget are what we're still waiting on from the state. The additional compensation supplement, the additional 2%, and then the revenue, the additional revenue that is expected to come from the sales tax. If those things come through, our budget should be supported fully. The piece is that the county will be in the same type of situation as us, and that they'll have to have an approved budget by code by a certain timeline, and there may not be a finalized state budget. And so they'll have to make those decisions certainly on the county level when they, next month, when they have their public hearing and do their final voting there. So it could look like next month when the county votes on theirs that it doesn't show that whole amount that we're asking there, because they would hold back on the additional pieces that we are expecting to come in from the state but haven't. So if they do, then we go back and say, these are the pieces that we originally asked for, and they would work with us to put those in. If they don't, then we have to make decisions on our end, what pieces need to be cut out of our budget.
So we can amend the budget.
Absolutely, we could. And we could go back and say, you received this much. This was something that we were holding out on. We need this much in order to support that fully. And they're very amenable to us coming back and saying, these are the pieces that we still need to balance what our needs are for FY24.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Dr. Sykes.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
thorough.
And then you do need to
Thank
vote
you,
on
Ms.
this.
Smith.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the budget proposal as presented by Dr. Sykes.
Second.
Moving properly second. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is so carried. All right, next we have Middlesex County Sheriff Department, Sheriff Bushy.
Actually, we have Major Sampson here representing the Sheriff's Department, we are in touch on a regular basis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As Dr. Sykes has said, we're in contact with each other on a fairly regular basis with some of the trials and tribulations that we've had with our SROs here over the last couple of years. I would like to point out that the team of the SROs that we have right now currently the people that are in the schools currently, that are representing the sheriff's office is the best, without a doubt, team that we have of SROs since I've been here. And I came here in 1994. Next year will be my 30-year anniversary here at the sheriff's office. And I've seen a lot of people come and go through this office. But those three individuals that we have are absolutely dedicated to being the best SRO, and they take a whole lot of pride in their jobs they've been assigned to. Just a little bit about being an SRO. The temperature of today, obviously, in law enforcement is not the same as it has been in the past. The teachers do the exact same thing. It's kind of the same thing. We're not feeling all the love that we've had in the past as far as the teachers and law enforcement. So that, keeping that in mind, try to put a law enforcement officer in the school system. How many volunteers are we going to get? You know, some of these people that they've been assigned to the SRO program. And it may not have been their first choice, but I will say the people, again, that are in there now, and the people that we've assigned there over the last, I would say, 6 or 8 years, they've done their very best, despite some of the things that have happened in the past with our SROs that are there. They've done their best to make that job their career and their passion, in particular, the ones that are there now. And so I would like to commend the people that are there now. I think they're doing a very, very good job. Also, I was asked to maybe talk a little bit about the role of the SRO within the school system. I apologize for taking my glasses on and off. I'm still trying to get used to being sight, whatever you want. But maybe just a little bit about what we do, things we can do, things we can't do, how our relationship is working with the schools as it pertains to investigations that may be going on in the school, whether they are a criminal investigation versus an administrative investigation that the school would be handling, and what our roles would be or not be as far as that goes. So I'd really, as I'm talking, please interrupt me if you have a question about anything, and we can kind of start right now if there's any questions as far as anything that I've talked about so far. Keeping in mind that any investigation that an SRO is going to be doing within the school is going inevitably, obviously, have to do with a juvenile. We have to hold that information very close to the vest sometimes, to the point where it almost seems uncomfortable, maybe to people that aren't 100% familiar on how this goes, how the investigation goes. We do our very best at the sheriff's office to be as transparent as we possibly can, but there are some things that we can't put out, okay? There's also any ongoing investigation or things that we can't talk about. And we have a few of those going on. Again, our SROs, they're not only the hallway monitors, they're also, you know, they hold a vast array of hats when they walk into that school, and they have to really walk that line. And sometimes it's tough. It's tough. You know, they call like, hey, what's going on with this? They'll have a conversation with one of the principals. Then they'll have a conversation with the administrative staff at the sheriff's office. That's typically when Dr. Seitz and I will talk, so we can steady those lines a little bit and come together. So with that being said, some of the things that have changed with SROs, is there any questions up to this point? Please just jump in. I'll just keep rambling.
That's you actually hitting on what I'm thinking. I want to know that the investigating side of what the SRO is responsible for.
Okay. I can give you some for instances. Obviously not commenting on anything that's going on right now, but we've had instances within the school where it's not just the SRO that does the investigation. Sometimes we have specialized people within the department that do social media, that do intraweb type investigations. They're much more versed in the technical side of some things that if it were to come out through social media, if there was a crime through social media or a complaint through social media, we have people for that. We have people that are have specifically dealt with child crimes in the past. Matter of fact, it's an old SRO that we have, Detective Gatlin, who was moved on from his SRO position at the high school, and he's now a detective with us. So I hope I'm going to answer your question specifically, and if I'm not, just make it more specific.
Can I follow that?
Yes, sir.
In the case of some of the parents that I've talked with, some of the things we heard tonight, if a parent hears about bullying that goes on, maybe on social media, maybe face to face, what's the procedure for that parent to use in order to bring it to the attention of somebody that can do something about it?
Well, I'm hoping that they're going to you all first, and the administration first. Especially if it's happening in school. We
But on
also.
social media, you don't know where. it's
Exactly,
at.
right, or the timing that it's coming from. I think that there are crimes, the thing that kind of aggravates me a little bit with what you're talking about in general. When you make a blanket statement about a group of people, this is where mine and the sheriff's frustration comes in, is they're like, well, we don't have a specific victim. And the code sets out that there has to be a specific victim. Our argument is, it's every person that's in that group is the specific victim. We're trying to argue a little bit with code section as it goes back and forth. But if you're, you can report that crime. If you think that's a crime, that's something that they can absolutely call the sheriff's office about and report that crime. If you don't think it's happening, or if you don't think the school would be the right way.
So.
Are you asking maybe if the SRO should be the one called?
Let's say somebody says something that I consider to be a verbal assault, and I get it on, I don't have Snapchat, but if I did, a text, yeah. That's more my speed. What should I do about that? If I'm a parent, and my child gets that kind of a text, what should the parent do?
Call the sheriff's
Because I
office.
think there's
Actually,
some
first and foremost, what should happen is they need to save this information. And it's funny, we're talking about text versus Snapchat, because the Snapchat kind of, once it's there, it kind of goes. And there are always some ways to recover it with a little bit of more. I'm not good with that. That's why I work where I work.
Magic.
Yes, sir. Now the text messages, most of it caught in time, can be recovered. If possible at all, save what you have gotten immediately. Somehow take a screenshot of it. If you need to take multiple screenshots, and then immediately call the sheriff's office, because it may not be the person that's working that case that you'll speak with, but that initial deputy or whomever it would be that you would talk to, they could take the initial report, and it would be passed on to the people that have that expertise.
I think that clarifies it, at least for me. And I will certainly get that back to the parents that I.
And if you don't know, like I don't know how all that stuff exactly works. We have people that understand it inside and out. They're different worlds when you talk about a social media versus a text, or a Snapchat versus a text, and I've found that out the hard way as well, even through my personal stuff. I mean, I have 5 children as well, so I'm very familiar.
And that's the same procedure if it's a face-to-face.
It's actually a different crime to communicate threats electronically. It's a
But the
different code.
procedure would be the same.
The procedure would be the same. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
So if we have some investigating that need to be done, we're having school administration having to do a lot of investigating, which takes up time from doing other things. So at what point does the sheriff department take it and run with it?
If it is a crime, we should be handling that. If that is a crime, now, who determines if it's a crime? That would be an administrator to the SRO. As long as it's getting communicated and the SRO is getting the information, if they're looking and they're deeming it's a crime, or they have a question, they have no problem calling our Commonwealth attorney or myself or the sheriff. They usually don't have a big problem doing that. Say, hey, this is kind of what we got. What do you think? Now, sometimes the people that we get different opinions sometimes, even from within our own group, about the crime and what it is and to what level it rises. I don't think that an administrator at the school should be doing criminal investigations.
That's my point.
That's our opinion at the sheriff's office. That's why we get paid all this money. That's a joke too.
That's my point.
Yes, yes. We should be doing those investigations.
Anyone else? Okay.
couple more
Continue.
things, just if I could,
Please.
This year, well, let me go back. In 2020, they passed a law stating and pertaining to standards for school resource officers. Fortunately, at the time, Middlesex was already adhering to these, which most schools already have, but they just needed to pass a law, I guess, to make sure that everybody was on the same page. It's a little different, but we had already been doing these things. To get into law enforcement in general, the code says 18 years of age. You can actually do this job at 18 years of age. If there's anybody out there willing to do that. The SROs, they've mandated that they're 21. There's some obvious reasons there. You don't really want a 19-year-old, but there's also some other things. Now they are mandating that you have 2 years of law enforcement experience before you become an SRO. I think that's a very smart thing for that to be made law. And that's the standard that DCJS has now adopted. They just adopted this and it goes into effect July 1 of this year. They also have mandated, this was not mandated prior to this, that every SRO attend a SRO basic training course specific to their job and their assignment. We had all of ours had already been through that stuff. They had all been through an SRO school and so forth. They're also, this is new and I think this is pretty good. They're actually starting a certification exam. So if you are an SRO, you have to take the exam at the end of your SRO course and you have to pass that. And I'm not sure of the particulars on what the exam are, the standards for passing. I'm sure that they're like any other thing with DCJS, it's got to be 100%. So, so that was just a little bit that I wanted that maybe people took for granted that was already that way, and it was not, but Middlesex had already been doing that. So what we're going to be doing this year, I've been speaking with Kim Simon, who's the director, the training and program coordinator with DCJS. She's the one that puts on the big SRO conference in August. We're going to be going to that. We've reached out for the grant money that's going to be available for us to keep us so the people can stay there. And then at the end of that, we are immediately going to be taking that certification exam. So we're going to kind of be ahead of the game, but they're going to start mandating that July 1. So we're going to be taking it in August as soon as that's going to actually be the first one available. So I would love to answer any other question that you may have.
And just to be clear,
Yes, ma'am.
because I don't think everybody understands this.
Okay.
Our SROs are sheriff department employees.
That is 100% correct.
Not Middlesex County Public School.
That's
employees.
correct. That is correct. They work for the sheriff and that is their post. As if you were assigned to the town of Urbana, or you had to work the town of Urbana within the town limits for your 12-hour shift or your 8-hour shift. This is what we actually used to do. We actually assigned a deputy to Urbana. They're assigned to that school during their shift, and that's their responsibility. I could tell you exactly how the code reads is that the definition of a school resource officer means a certified law enforcement officer hired by the local law enforcement agency to provide law enforcement and security services to Virginia public elementary and secondary schools. So that we are there to provide. Now, again, I think we've worked pretty good as far as where the admin versus the law enforcement side come. I think we could step to that side a little bit if we're needed to help. And then, I think we work pretty good. I think it's gotten a lot better. I know there's some hairy times there for a while. I think everything is really, really good right now.
I know 2-3 years ago, there was a big push to remove SROs from the schools. And this board was not in favor of that at all, because we feel like we have an excellent working relationship with the sheriff's department. And I have noticed that some of those divisions who got rid of their SROs are now reinstated.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, absolutely. I think it's a good thing. We were the first school in this area to include Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, and even some on the peninsula to have an elementary SRO, to actually to start that seeing of the SROs in the elementary school at that young age. And it's a much different role for an SRO in an elementary school. And we have the perfect guy there for that to work with those kids. And it's much different again at the high school. It's three different jobs. I will promise you, it's three different jobs. An SRO elementary, a middle school SRO, and then a high school SRO, three specific things there. So,
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
yes, indeed. Thank you all.
Taking the time.
Next, we have instruction report. Dr. Bishop.
My only instructional report, good short for the instructional piece. We're starting our SOLs starting tomorrow. So that is, so kids are hopefully getting a good night's sleep, and it's amazing already we are at SOL season. My presentation tonight is really about safety, support, and response. And I'm going to look at this in the scope of division-wide, looking at the lens of our proactive measures to support positive student behavior, increasing student engagement and belonging in our schools, and supporting students socially and emotionally by working together with each other. This will also incorporate on the other side when students don't behave appropriately and meet our expectations. But what I'll do is the picture really is painted that we have in terms of the students in the school, they have and the expectations are pretty clear. So the next slide, I think, let's go through that list of things that include character education. So character education is embedded in the curriculum, such as a discussion. We adopted EL curriculum, so we're looking at in fifth grade in English, they talked about athletes being leaders and looking at social change, like Jackie Robinson. This happened last year, it's happening again this year. And that EL curriculum is really kind of spiraling from grade 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, looking at social justice, looking at environment, looking at kindness. Currently right now, the students are reading Hidden Figures in the 7th grade. Another thing with character education at the elementary, we have PULP matrix at MES that lists the things students should do in the classrooms. They revamped that this year. They took the summer to look, all the teachers got together and said, let's not look at what students shouldn't do in the classroom, the hallway, the gymnasium. Let's look at what the students should do. So it's a very proactive, positive way to reframe those. And those are posted in the hallways and things like that. Another thing for character education, our students went to the Renaissance Conference at the high school, sponsored by Joss's in terms of leadership. I'm just giving you a broad picture, kind of looking at the division, looking at just some things that are going on in our schools in terms of character education. And of course, we have the SOAR as well at the middle school level. In classroom meetings, at every 2 weeks, we have Hawk Circles at St. Clair Walker. Hawk Circles are encouraged to have positive student interactions to create a culture of kindness. It's based on a middle school curriculum on kindness in schools. I was in a classroom today and Mrs. Jedlinski referred to the kindness or the Hawk Circle from last week. The students were going to watch a video based upon that. So it is spiraling. The teachers, they use it as a platform so students can really think about that and apply it to the curriculum. Topics covered so far in Hawk Circles have included picturing what a kind SCW community would look like, and including managing our own anger and frustration. So looking at ways to as an individual and as a group, looking at those different ways to look at and to behave and to work together as a community. Student classroom meetings have also taken place with administrators and the school counselor to set expectations at SCW. Those included, the end result of that was the students then created a paper chain with each child and teacher writing one thing that they would like to do to make a school a kinder place. I think the chain last time I saw it was out in the cafeteria. It's growing. Everyone's making a paper chain. It's going to be
hung in the St. Clair Walker, possibly in the cafeteria. There's also meetings planned for grade levels, grade 6 through 12. The 9th District Court Service Unit will provide a short presentation at the school that will cover things like school threats, bomb threats, possessions of weapons, and firearms. So really setting that other expectation, what not to do in school. And of course, at each school level, we have a tiered system of supports, which is PBIS. PBIS is, there's different layers of that. Principals use the data to address issues that could include the type of student behavior, those involved, where it occurred, where to be more present, to inform faculty of certain behaviors to look for, and to address those behaviors with individual students or groups of students. And another thing, that anonymous donor just recently gave donuts to MHS, and the students that did not receive an ISS or an OSS for the year each received a donut. So really making sure that our students who do the right thing are awarded and recognized. At SCW, there is safety, ownership, attitude, and respect, or SOAR. It's used to lead discussions regarding appropriate behavior. They have a SOAR pledge every day. And at MES, they have the COLT matrix, which I just talked about. And it's used to recognize students that do the right thing, using monthly grade level events. And then quarterly, they have a big party for those students who receive those dojo points, in terms of the student does the right thing, respects artwork, helps the student out. They get a dojo point. The more dojo points you get to go to these different events. There's also school bridging activities. One of the most exciting thing is a freshman academy. We have all of our 8th graders in the summertime come, and they build community led by Drew, Lane, and Miss Fleet. They are basically, what's the expectations for the high school? How do you behave appropriately? And really building that esprit de corps. And of course, we have parent-teacher conferences. We have the ones in October, obviously, that are planned, but at any time, an administrator, a teacher, a parent, or even a student can schedule a parent-teacher conference to look at their behavior, their academics, and support that they need. We also have academic and career planning meetings at the high school and St. Clair Walker, which include parents in the plan to schedule classes and to prepare for life post MCPS. We have counselors with small group meetings and ranging from friendship groups to organization to coping with anxiety. We also have student mentorships. There's a general education students are integrating into the PACE program at MHS, providing support for students with disabilities. MHS athletes are going to MES, or the elementary school, into this month to read to the students to read to our elementary school students. And of course, we have student clubs. We have anti-bullying club at SCW. This next week, the week after, there's a anti-bullying week. And of course, last week or the week before, there was a kindness week that was sponsored by the anti-bullying club, putting posters around the school to spread kindness, setting up a card making station during lunch, organizing an opportunity for students to let teachers know the impact they've made, and selling candygrams. At MHS, a new club was in fact created, a new club just created just a couple weeks ago. An anime club is up and running because the student decided to reach out to the principal. The principal said, hey, great idea, let's start an anime club. So all those different clubs are supported. And at SCW, there are clubs as well, and they're doing that hawk time in the morning. And of course, we have extracurricular activities. We have activities to increase student belonging. We have the cheer, we have the sports, we have music, scholastic bowl, etc. We also have music, the musical coming up at SCW and MES, which we're all proud for that within our community. So that's kind of basically the proactive measures. I'm going to go quickly over the student behavior and response measures. Those range from the classroom, looking at the verbal correction, communication. That's really that classroom directed changing behavior. Then we have the next level, which is teacher teams. If the behavior is not addressed at the classroom level with that student and student-teacher relationship, it becomes more of a team approach. And then, of course, we have the administration approach, which is in-school suspension. Sorry about that typo. Excluded from, they could be excluded from activities, change the schedule, or out of school suspension. So those are kind of the layers of levels of ways we respond to student behavior. And my last slide is these levels where this is in our handbook, our student behavior, our student handbook for our discipline. So we have levels, depends on if the teacher's just encouraged to attempt a variety of classroom management strategies. Level 2, teacher teams with administration to correct behavior while stressing the seriousness of the incident. Level 3, up to 5 days suspension on short-term removal from the school. Level 4, an extended period of time, a long-term suspension. And then level 5, it's more frequent. Those are the long-term suspension, expulsion, or an alternative setting. So there is a leveled response that we look at as administrators so that we're really trying to not just be punitive, teach students the way to behave within the classroom setting, the school, and even extracurriculars. So that's kind of the proactive part and the reactive part. And I'm here if you have any questions.
And so at each school, you have the team established to work on.
Like the teams at, let's say at St. Clair Walker, it would be the grade level team. They're fluid. Sometimes they would pull the psychologist from the school board office if it needs to go that far, or Ron Kostensky, our school social worker. So that's a fluid team, so to speak.
At what level of those teams is the parent asked to come and be present in the meeting?
They're all levels, every level. If level 1, a teacher is to encourage or attempt a variety of classroom management techniques, probably not going to involve the student. Hey, sit down. Sit down. This is, let's have a meeting after class. That would be something that would just be a teacher-student communication. But if it gets to a different level where the student doesn't change the behavior, it would involve the parent. So at all levels of these, parents are involved. Especially when to level 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's the communication. And of course, we have, when level 2 is even bringing the parent into a team level conference. So all team of teachers gets together with the parent, with the student, and let's talk about how we can change behavior. And it's not just social behavior, it could be academic behavior as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we will open the floor again for public comment. If you come forward, please state your name, the district that you are living in, and you have 3 minutes. So the floor is now open again.
Good evening. Now I'm speaking for Dawn Moore. I live in the Urbana district. I've heard a lot of things here tonight. I see a lot of things and I've talked to a lot of parents in the community. I have a relationship with Ms. Fleet because of my nephew. I have my relationship with Ms. Daniel because of some incidents. I am working on a relationship with Ms. Saunders because that's where my child will be next year. But I'm involved in my child's life. I do not let her get a step But there's a lot of children who are falling through the cracks. And it's up to us as a community to help them. But with some of the issues going on, I know parents are the first step. So whether you call me, because I already told my child left home today and I wasn't too happy with her. And I told her, you better, Miss Daniel, don't call me. That is, we are responsible for our children. But if you're in class saying, well, let's write this paper, because a parent told me they did not know the depth that their child was behaving in school and never would have known if other actions weren't taken outside. I always say, you have to affect the parents' day. That is, you want to hold us responsible, you need to affect the parents' day. Because she already knew if I got a call from Miss Danny today, she was not going to be happy when I picked her up. So to me, I love what was on the board, and Elliot, I had wrote that question right here on my paper. I did not see in that level response, never did I see the mention of a parent. It should not get to 5-day suspension before you send a letter home to me that my child's being suspended. I should have been the first call saying, hey, Ms. Moore, I think we have a slight problem. Can we discuss this? Because a lot of parents are saying they don't have that communication. I was very upset for parent conference because it's not like it was before COVID. And I was pushed in there. I had 2 minutes and I was pushed out. It's not the same. You want to help, you include the parent, whether they want to be included or not. When you mess with their day, they'll be included. Thank you.
Thank you. Board member, my brother. I'm James Emery, 1979 graduate from Middlesex High School. It's okay.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say, since I retired and came back, I've been an active member supporting the school system. I would just like to say, as Dawn said, it takes a lot of us to make this work. You all probably know both of my sons, Jamel and Jake. We work endlessly to make sure that they understand authority, which a lot of kids don't. I want to thank Ms. Sykes and Ms. Fleet on a regular basis for being supportive of the system. Because when we took that bus, believe it or not, up to Heritage High School and stopped by Lynchburg College, some kids had never been on a bus. We do different things that teaches these kids every day. And it's going to take every one of us, and not just the ones here. As we always say in church, you're preaching to the ones that don't need to hear it almost. It's the ones that's outside these doors that we have to bring in here and get them to understand what's going on. And it's going to take people like me and many, many more people to voice our opinions and make them understand what Ms. Fleet and Ms. Sykes are going. Because I see, I've dealt in the school systems. And the most encouraging thing I think that this board can do is constantly follow up, make your little notes, do personal talks with some people. Because during my tenure in the military, while I was in Texas, Louisiana, Berlin, Germany, and finally Fort Riley, Kansas. I served on boards in the school system. And then my kids were so young, they were PTOs. It wasn't a time where we had alumni and all that, we were getting older, we were younger. But it makes a difference. It makes a difference. So anything, in any way that I personally can assist, don't hesitate. Thank you. Don't hesitate to call. At any time, I will do whatever I can to support the system. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rachel Gresham. My concern is, I saw that.
Could you move the microphone closer in?
It may be off.
Yeah, when it fell, I don't know, it hasn't been right since it fell.
No.
Is the light on it?
I think that's been.
No.
Yeah,
Dr. Sanders is gonna check it. and
Yeah.
see.
yeah, if it fell, something happened. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go, perfect.
So my concern is, I heard Deputy Sampson say something, but I couldn't hear what he said. And what he said really didn't make a lot of sense to me as far as clarification of what an SRO does. So is there some way we can get a printout of what it is, or have him come where we can actually ask questions? Because what he said was like, yep, 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 yep. You couldn't distinguish whether he was actually answering your questions and what they actually do. The only thing I was clear on is that they work for the sheriff's department. That's it. So if there's some way I can get some information on that. And I'm really concerned about the young lady that spoke earlier about her child getting hurt, where she's riding to Richmond with a disabled child that's being sent up to Faison. And she said her child had been injured, been in 5 car accidents. She's had a concussion. Oh, y'all know something about that? Because that's really concerning to me. And I'm going to want to investigate a little further because I sit on the CPMT board, which Dr. Seitz knows. And then I don't know how the situation has been addressed that we talked about last month. I was wondering what happened to having a community meeting where we could ask questions that could be answered back and forth rather than just wait for a month, get a little bit of information, have a little presentation where half the people aren't even here. You know, we need to do better. Communication wise, it's horrible. You know, we're really not getting clear answers. And even though your presentation was good, but I have several questions as far as that's concerned. But we can't have a conversation back and forth here, which I could get the answers if I call you, but then how's the rest of the community gonna know? That seems to me the biggest problem is that the communication with the community is not clear. You know, it doesn't seem to be communicated clearly. In the last meeting, when everybody was dismissed, and then we had a whole presentation after that, but everybody was gone. We got to do better because we need to understand so we can work with you. You know, I do all I can in Middlesex County. Anywhere that I can go and be a help, I do it. But I got to know what the problem is in order to address it. Then I got to know what the solutions are and help to form them. And I'm willing to do that, but I need information. So once again, I appreciate you, Mr. Burnett, and I thank you.
Public input is now closed. All right. Next, we have superintendent's report.
I just have a few updates on things. The overflow parking lot at the elementary school, Bay Design Group is working through some additional hoops with the DEQ. They tend to put some things in process even after we submitted the application. But Bay Design is on top of it. It just may extend completion by a month. They were looking at having that completed by the end of the summer. And so there may be a little bit of an extension there, but they're keeping us updated. March Madness has started in the schools educationally. So if you were watching the selection Sunday and finding out who was going to the dance, I can tell you that our kids were already dancing at different levels. At the elementary school, they've started Book Madness, and so they're voting on those, and we're all participating in video recording new books that will be put into the classrooms, and the kids are voting on those and following a bracket. Fifth graders had Math Madness going on last week in the fifth grade classroom, and some of us were able to visit in there. They were working on computation and estimation problems because they'd used the data from their most recent math assessment and determined that that was the area the kids needed to work on, but they're having a lot of fun in the way that the classrooms are set up in doing that. Sixth graders in social studies were doing a Bill of Rights debate, and then they were kind of moving on as they won their debate into the next bracket. And so they take advantage of what's going on around them and bring that into the classroom. So it's educational, but it's also fun. So our kids are dancing. And then lastly, our spring sports have started just as our winter has finished. They're still, our division is still, you'll notice that there's not a publicized spring sports schedule, and that's because it's changing almost on a daily basis. Because some of the divisions are still trying to field teams for our spring sports. And so they'll keep the website and such updated, but again, changes are being made almost a daily basis, but spring sports have begun. And so that is my report for the evening.
Okay. All right. Any old business?
Dr. Science, do we have any update on the high school renovation? It's been a year since we had our initial meeting.
It has been. So the finance committee has a meeting coming up, and hopefully we can nail down some next steps there. It was discussed that potentially setting up a committee to investigate the renovation piece where there's 2 board members from each of the boards to move forward. I did reach out to Mosley Architects and let them know that that was something that we were looking for in the future to have them invited to also. We've still got some time left on what we had purchased for their master study plan. And so really the next steps are on our end and getting that committee together to move forward. And determine what our next steps are.
Which we hope to find.
Which
Something this meeting.
right, yes.
Any new business? Seeing there is none, I have a motion to adjourn.
Somebody?
Nobody move on? Can I get a second?
Second.
Probably second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's go. Voting is adjourned. Let's go home.